Hey, what's up, everybody? Today I am with the Lutheran Answers, Remy Shepard from X, and today I'm going to be talking to him, bug him a little bit about his seminary life, what he's doing right now in his vicarage, also asking him some questions about life, culture, theology. I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. I sure had a really fun time talking to him. He's always a pleasure to talk to. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, and like always, thanks again for tuning in to the Lift High the Cross podcast. To start off the podcast, it's really good to talk to you again. Probably the first question I'd like to ask you is how you're doing in seminary. Last time we talked a year and a half ago, we were talking about your journey to seminary, and I just wanted to ask you, how's your vicarage going? How's everything going? Everything going well?
Yeah, things are going really, really well. They haven't kicked me out of sim yet, which is lovely. Despite my best efforts and despite all of the people that constantly screen cap my tweets and send them to the seminary, I have yet to be kicked out, which is lovely. So that's great. I got another year and a half, maybe 2 years to finish all my coursework, and then that'll be that.
I can't imagine any posts would look negative to any professors that you'd send. I just can't see that.
Well, it's funny that, that people will occasionally screen cap my tweets and send them in, because all of the people at the seminary, my professors and so forth, they all follow me and engage with me regularly. So like they're already seeing it. I don't know what shocking news anybody's bringing forward. So can I drink here? This is a glass of wine. Is that okay?
No, you may not. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. Yeah. The other day, this wasn't a bad post, obviously not, but someone actually DM'd me the other day because he knows that we follow each other. And it was the post you made about, if I remember, you said, I think Catholics are Christian, but I'm skeptic about the Baptists. And he was actually really, really concerned about it. And I just said, he's just joking. But
yeah. Well, it depends. I'm just joking. It depends. So I'm not joking that Catholics are Christians. I'm not joking about that. They are Christians. And probably also most Baptists are Christians. But I mean, of the two groups, the Baptists are the ones that can't affirm the Nicene Creed. So, I mean, that's suspect to me. I don't know, but
yeah, definitely. I would say, probably from my perspective, well, especially a friend of mine who is actually looking to the Nicene Creeds right now, and he's Baptist, and we have such a funny conversation. He'll usually bring it up. He'll say good things about it, but he won't have any problems with the Trinity or anything like that. But of course, it comes down to baptism. So I don't really, I never really see it as a problem from when they reject the Nicene Creed. I think it's good that my friend's looking into it at least. Thank God he's not denying anything like the Trinity, but yeah, it is interesting, especially going through that. That's actually one of my questions that came up. Obviously, you've had an evangelical background, and you've been Lutheran Answers for a while, Remy. And so this is a question that also comes around a lot in my podcast as well, and this is going to be helpful, especially for me, to talk to you about it. What's the best way to introduce Lutheranism to evangelicals? I know this is a very, very basic question to start off the podcast, but I think it's a good one to ask any Lutheran, especially a lot of guys my age, because most of the people they contact or talk to, or they try to have theological conversations, usually it's from people from the Bible Belt. That's where I'm from, Southwest Missouri. So when those conversations come, especially if they're like, do you think a really old creed is the right way to go, or you actually think washing of water or the Eucharist is the right way? How do you encounter that the right way, and if there's a right way at all?
Yeah, I think there is. I do want to ask, am I actually recording audio? I know you can hear me, but I don't see any little bars on my thing.
Interesting.
You have all the little bars, you see.
Is your microphone on?
My microphone should be on. You wouldn't be able to hear me if it weren't on.
I can hear you.
Okay.
Wait, I can see bars right now from my side.
Oh, okay.
Better. Yeah. Hopefully,
okay.
If I could just repeat the question just in case if it wasn't recording. So just to make it simple, probably one of the basic question, but a really important question. A lot of Lutherans ask me, what's the best way to talk to evangelical Christians, very common Christian denominations, about Lutheranism? Because that's a very hard leap from evangelical, very basic Christianity to Lutheran liturgy or theology. So what's a good way to start making those conversations? Obviously, it's kind of hard to go right to start confessing the Eucharist, because that's going to be very hard for people to understand that. So what's a good way to start those kind of conversations and start explaining Lutheranism to a lot of those different Christians?
Sure. So where I'm at, Pentecostalism is what really has the hold on the theological conversation in this area in the South. It's a lot of charismatic. I live in an area that's just saturated with charismatic theologies. And what you find is a lot of people that really, really, really love Jesus. And that's wonderful. That's so great. You find people that love Jesus, and they maybe don't have quite the grasp on historic theology. They know what they believe, but maybe not the historic theology. Definitely not the liturgy. So I found that the best thing to do is start with and I have these conversations a lot with people I work with, people I interact with. I can tell you the thing that works for me is to start with your common mutual love of Jesus. And the thing about a lot of evangelicalism, and especially in charismatic circles, is it's very law heavy. It's very, very, very law heavy. And so when you start with Jesus, and then you can interject the gospel into these conversations with people, that goes a long way, because generally they've heard something like the gospel, but it's been very muddled. They've heard that, God saved you. Now you have to do X, Y, and Z. And so the gospel they have is one that saved them out of their sin, and now it's up to them to do the rest of it. And so to preach the actual gospel to people and to be able to share with them the love of Christ in that way, in the Lutheran understanding of the gospel. And then when they get curious about that, I've never quite heard it put like that. You say, yeah, well, of course, because, in, Romans or in John or what have you, then you can turn to the scriptures and you can read it to them in context. And often the reaction is, I've never read that like that, or I've never heard that taught like that. And then you can start to have more and more conversations. And as it goes, it starts with people having a mutual conversation with you because you're a Christian, and it kind of moves into them picking your brain a little bit. I'm not too interested in sheep stealing, as it were. I would love it if everyone were a confessional Lutheran, but if they are happy and being well-fed, well-nourished spiritually around here, it's going to be charismatic or Baptist congregation, and they really are into the word every day. If I can just interject little things to help sort of correct their theology as it goes, I'm happy with that. I certainly don't think, despite what I said at the top of the program, that any of those people are going to hell. So it's just about, interjecting the gospel and the truth when you can, because we have a way of viewing those things, the gospel and the word. We have a very specific way as Lutherans of viewing those things that many Protestants are not used to at all. And when they encounter it, it really can be life-changing for them.
Yeah, definitely. That's one way that I've, through podcasting and considering ministry, going through a lot of different places to study, the best way that I want to stay away from trying to be similar to the Catholics or to the Protestants is that I really try hard to make people understand that, yes, we're Protestant, but we're not in the category of Protestants like Catholics like to put us out to be. Like, we're all just one category of Protestants, and then same way how Protestants look at us through Catholics and how they think we're just the same guys that have just branched out, and it's just some kind of, oh, you're crazy, you believe in good works, oh, you believe that we're eating Christ's body and blood. It's crazy. but I come to a realization that probably the best way that I like to explain it is that, yeah, we're both. We're both Catholic. We're both Protestant. We are rooted into the Catholic tradition. If you look at our liturgy, we are so rooted into the traditional worship, and that for a good reason. Just reading through Flame's new book right now, I'm starting to look into a lot of the church fathers, which has also encouraged me to look through a lot of church fathers I haven't really studied before and how they studied and did things like practicing close communion, infant baptism. They did that for a reason. That's why we do that. And so if you're wanting to add on that, you can. I was just talking about how I love all those different ways we can study and see why we do it, because obviously it'd be nice to be united like the Catholics think we could, and they are, or Protestants think we got to be this one random church from 50 years ago that's got it right. But there is really one way, and we can't really sacrifice all this just to bring unity. Those things are really important.
Yeah, I think unity is an interesting subject. I think it's important to maintain a distinction between a visible and invisible church when we talk about unity, because we can all certainly be united in Christ, but generally, and as you study the fathers and as you get deeper into history, I think you'll notice that the unity that, say, the Catholics talk about, that, oh, we're all united in the Catholic Church, is a front. It's a lie. It doesn't really exist the way they want you to think it does. And I'm not sure it ever has. I'm not sure it ever will. But I think there's certainly something to be said for a unification of believers and being able to come together and recognize one another, as brothers of Christ, whether you're Protestant or Catholic or what have you, and being able to move together towards certain goals. I'm not going to commune a Baptist at my church. If you come to my church, you're not going to get communion. I love you. God bless you. You'll get a blessing for sure. But you're not in communion. You're not in fellowship with us, so you're not going to receive communion from us. But that doesn't mean that we can't link arms at a Right to Life rally, or work together to feed the local homeless population or something like that.
Yeah, my friend that I've interviewed before, Dr. Hambrake, I remember one time we were for some reason, I was there at the high school youth room just for that day for some reason, and he was also there, and we were discussing about church unity and how a lot of Christians, that especially guys that have come on my show, that they want to really grab all churches to come together because we can be unified, and yeah, this is possible. We can make this happen. Let's all come one with the Eucharist. Let's come one with baptism. Let's do all that. And I remember we were talking about this, and my friend Dr. Hambrake, he asked a question. He said, when do you think Christians were united the most? And on the top of my head, I said, well, maybe Jesus' reincarnation, maybe when all the followers saw Jesus flying up into heaven. He always asks those kind of questions that just kind of go through me, and I don't really know what he's going to say because you never really know what he's going to answer. And he says, we never were united. Jesus was there. We were able to see him, but we were never fully united because we're sinners. We're always making those mistakes. You look at the church fathers, yep. There's still a lot of things they disagreed with too. And that's the important part that you need to understand as a Christian. Scripture is everything. God's word is everything. And so as much as it's good to be united, we're never going to be fully on page 100% united. So there's going to be people you're going to piss off. There's people that's always going to be dissing and agreeing with you. And there's always going to be people going to be attacking you. But I love how Flame is always telling this in his books and through his preaching. He's always saying, don't sacrifice God's sacraments or his teachings over unity, because it's not worth it. Yeah,
it's not. No, it's not worth it. And you can just look at the ELCA today, a good Lutheran example we will all know. The ELCA today is real big on outward unity, and they will declare fellowship with anybody for any reason. And their church is still dying rapidly, horribly, a terrible death. It's not doing anything to help them grow. It's not doing anything to bring for every one person you bring on board. How does it how does it go? Whenever two churches combine, you end up with three churches, right? Because the two originals, you have those that abstain, and then you have the new one. That's how it always goes. The unity thing is a sham. I'm actually very impressed with your answer. The apostles. You're right. Probably right at the ascension is going to be the most unified that everyone was for that moment, right? As far as the church goes. But I mean, even, you're a smart guy. Do you know the first heresy the church had to put down and the first council that was convened to put it down?
Probably not from the top of my head.
It's the Council of Jerusalem and the Judaizer heresy. It's actually recorded for us in Acts, in the book of Acts, where they all get together to talk about the Judaizers, and they say, well, you have to keep the Torah in order to be a Christian. Jesus is great, but you also have to do all the Jewish commands. And this is the first thing that crops up in Christianity that the apostles have to get together. They have to argue over, and they have to hash out, and they have to figure it all out. And I mean, that's shockingly early. That's, it's in the Bible that it's that early. It's in the Bible. So, we're talking within a decade of Jesus ascending into heaven, we're already having to get together as a group and hash things out. So,
yeah, this will be next question. This will be a little bit of a transition, but I think it does. I think it's a good one to hop on from our previous questions. You interviewed Redeem Zoomer, good podcast. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about Reconquista? Just simple. What are your first thoughts about it? Church unity.
I think depending on the context, it's not an altogether unviable idea. I think, I don't think it fits. I don't think it fits everyone. So I think Lutheran Reconquista is a stupid idea because Lutheranism is a confessional ideology. So you either adhere to the confessions or you don't. And quite frankly, I don't want to be a part of your church if you're not adhering to the confessions. So I don't think it works necessarily for us, but maybe for the Presbyterians or maybe for Episcopalians, I think it's probably a decent idea. He disabused me of a lot of assumptions that I had about what Reconquista was. Go listen to that interview if you want to hear me change my mind on a subject in real time. It was interesting because he answered every objection I had and showed me that I was thinking about this thing the wrong way. And I think he makes a lot of good points. I think there's potential. I really think I know a lot of people disagree with me about that on the internet. But the internet's not real, so I don't care. But I think he's really got some decent potential.
Yeah, and he's also a great guy. Not to dog on him at all. He's probably one of the guys that really helped me start getting into theology during 2020 when he was making a lot of those videos that were going viral, which I really appreciate. If he ever sees this or sees my post, I know he's contacted me before, so it's really cool to see that, and I really appreciate everything he's done. But honestly, in my opinion, it really turns me off of how he's really just trying to bring people together, especially based on what kind of churches that he's telling Christians to go to. I don't know, just in my shoes, even if I wasn't Lutheran, even if I wasn't a confessional Lutheran, the idea of taking my family to a church that has a woman pastor or open communion, I don't really like that idea of it. I think there's definitely better ways. I think you could definitely go to those churches, try to communicate with them, but I don't think it really sends the right message out. You probably would know better because you've interviewed him, but from my perspective, joining to be a member at those kind of churches, I don't think is the right move when it comes to trying to change those people's minds or trying to help those people find the true gospel.
Well, the way I understand it, and since he's explained it to me this way, I know that there have been other clarifications he's made online that have, about like women pastors and things that might make someone hesitant. But so there are a lot of really solid confessional churches in really crappy denominations, right? There are a lot of really solid, really traditional, really confessional churches in the ELCA. And the reason they can't leave the ELCA is political or financial and not theological. There's a lot of churches where if you came out of the ELCA, was a merger of the ALC and the LCA. And if you belong to, I believe it was the LCA owned as a denomination the properties, sort of like the Methodist Church does. They owned the buildings and the land, and they installed pastors and whatever for congregations. And so all of those resources converted to ELCA resources. So there's a lot of churches where they want to leave, and they're totally free to leave at any time, but the ELCA is keeping your church, and it's keeping your land, and it's keeping all your endowments. And you no longer will have access to the graveyard that your family's been buried in. You no longer have access to the building that you were married in, that your children were baptized in. And, the ELCA at this point in time, where they're at financially, they would probably scrap it and sell it for parts anyway. So there's a lot of churches that have to stay because of things like that, because they have roots right there and they're tied down, but they're still very confessional churches. There's some scuttlebutt that the ELCA is going to get rid of the bound conscience clause soon. I think you'll see a lot of churches evacuate over that. But it's to say that all ELCA churches are supportive of transing the kids and gay woman pastors or whatever is a bit of a caricature. There's a lot of ELCA churches that do not support any of that stuff, but for one reason or another are bound to stay in the ELCA, whether it be financial or political or what have you. And so, as I understood Reconquista, the way he explained it to me on my show was that he's advocating that you go to churches like that, that are solid confessional, historically, theologically sound churches where the pastor still cares. And then if you can, while at that church, work your way into the apparatus of the system overall so that you can take over. Start making overtures at conventions and start getting elected to positions nationally within the church body and things like that. And I think it's a pretty sound strategy. If you want to take back the PCUSA, I think it's doable. The liberals took it from us. It should be possible to take it back. So I don't see it as an altogether ridiculous idea. And I didn't see it as, RZ telling people that you need to go sit under a trans lesbian bishop, and have Skittles for communion every Sunday and grin and bear it until such a time as you can get into office with the PCUSA. I didn't see him saying anything like that at all. Rather, it was find a solid confessional church that is a part of the PCUSA. They're few and far between, but they exist. Find them, join them, and then work your way up in the ranks of the larger denomination.
Yeah, that's definitely explains a lot better from how I've used to seeing Reconquista. Obviously, you can see a lot of what X or YouTube tries to see from Reconquista and seeing all the negatives of it. That's definitely what I would see most of that as well. Speaking of liberalism and things falling apart, be more unified, let's talk about my synod, the LCMS. From your point of view, from the LSC, what do you think about the LCMS from your point of view? Obviously, we've had a lot of problems in the last 5 to 10 years. It's debatable if our leadership has gotten better or worse. I think we're doing a little bit of better job, but obviously surveys and a lot of statistics are coming out that our congregations are becoming weak or small, or we still have a lot of conservative pastors, but there is a little bit of every now and then some people that are preaching heretical things, which obviously a lot of those surveys are an overreaction and they're not as big as a deal. But what are your thoughts on the LCMS and the struggles they're going through right now?
I don't think about the LCMS particularly very often. I'm not too worried about the LCMS, or worried with the LCMS, I should say. The LCMS is fine, I imagine. I think reports of liberalism in the LCMS are probably greatly overblown or exaggerated. People like to be upset about things online. I don't think the LCMS really has a big becoming liberal problem. There are certainly some churches in the LCMS that I find to be a little suspect, but the way Walther believed and the way the LCMS is structured, there is really little to no control that the denomination as a whole can exert on those churches. So, you may have, they can certainly, if a pastor is teaching something openly heretical, they can take the man to task, but it takes a bit more than an online outrage from people who don't understand what they're talking about and who are taking a 30-second clip out of context to condemn a pastor and get him defrocked. The LCMS is obviously going to do their due diligence before they take any actions against a pastor. They're going to, want to see everything in context. They're going to interpret things according to the 8th commandment, which is a problem people have on the internet. They don't put the best construction on things. And it's something as a Christian, you are required to do. You are required by your God to put the best possible construction on other people's words. If someone tells you they're telling you the truth, you have to believe them. That's what it is. You have to put the best construction on this. He says he's being honest with me. I really have no reason to disbelieve him. And in some way it's a misunderstanding, and maybe I shouldn't dogpile the guy on the internet. So I don't know. But I'm sure the LCMS will be fine. I don't really think about the LCMS, like I said, all that often. I'm not in the LCMS, and that's not really my concern what they do. They can, I wish them well. I hope they continue. I think they will continue. The shrinking congregations thing is a problem that everybody's facing right now. It's not just an LCMS problem. It's an everybody problem. The only churches right now that are not facing that problem are these like big conglomeration mega churches, and they're just sheep stealing and gobbling everybody up so that you have this giant one or two giant mega churches in a town, and that's just where everybody goes. So the non-denoms are really knocking it out of the park right now, but they're not I don't think they're specifically feeding sheep or growing the flock, as it were. I think the theology's bad and it's being taught by untrained men, but they're scratching itching ears, so they don't have the lose people problem. But everybody's, if you're confessional or liturgical in any kind of way, everybody's hurting right now. So
I'm curious, how is from like 14 to 18-year-old high schoolers, how is a church attendance for that age in the ALC? Because definitely the LCMS is struggling with that. I mean, obviously, looking at the youth gathering, there was 20,000 kids, but I can tell you this, from the LCMS perspective, a lot of those people aren't going to church consistently. So how's the church attendance for younger people at the ALC? I don't, just like same as you, I don't keep as much track of the ALC as the LCMS.
Sure. I also don't keep track of the ALC. I don't care about the ALC. No, I'm kidding. Ask me again in a year. I just got elected to some kind of position.
Oh, some kind of position.
Yeah, with our national youth thing. They just had their big about 3 weeks ago before the LCMS. We had our big youth thing, which is a small youth thing comparatively. LCMS has like 1,600 congregations or whatever. We have like 80, so significantly smaller youth thing that we have. I can tell you at my own church, we got a ton of youth. When we first joined this church, I told my wife, I said, in a few years, we're going to have a really rockin' youth group. And that was about 8 years ago or so. And now we have a really rockin' youth group. All those kids that were, young kids when we started going, between 2 and 7 years old. Now they're all in middle school, high school. And we have a really good, we just got a youth guy at the church for the first time since I've been there, the first time in almost a decade. We've actually got someone doing youth stuff, and he's putting together youth programs. It's really great. So at least at my own church, the youth is doing really good. And I can, like I said, in a year after I've sort of gotten my feet wet with whatever this position I got appointed to is, when I figure out what that is, I can probably have some better numbers for you.
I didn't know you guys had a different youth gathering. How is it? I'm really curious about that, because that's the first time I've heard about that. Because from when I was going through high school, I only knew about the National Youth Gathering and Higher Things. I've a bit of a opinionated when it comes to the youth gathering. There's a couple of things I don't really like. I am extremely biased towards Higher Things, and so that's something we can get into. But how is your gathering over at your synod?
I couldn't tell you. I didn't go.
Oh,
I've never been.
Oh, you've
I have
never
no
been?
idea.
Yeah. I've been to the National Youth Gathering once, and they just finished a couple of days ago, and I heard a lot of good stuff about it. I heard Flame was there. He did a show. I heard there was a lot of good sessions. My sister went there. She was telling me a lot of good things about it. I remember about 4 years ago when I went there, there's a couple of sketchy breakaways we went to. One thing I don't really like about it is that there's, you don't really know who's going to be preaching at a lot of those sessions. Sometimes they kind of bring whoever, it feels like. And I get there's hundreds of sessions that they have, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint everything, but that's kind of a weak spot in there as well. And then also there's a lot of charismatic worship through, which, I mean, they have a divine service at the end of every at the end of the last night at that week, and President Harrison is preaching there, which is showing the importance of divine service. But that's one issue I do have with that gathering. A lot of charismatic worship, a lot of more evangelical practices, which it's not something to blow over, like rejecting the Nicene Creed. Definitely. I wish the LCMS would promote something like the Higher Things, because I think 99% of all their sessions are top-notch traditional confessional Lutheranism teaching. I know a lot of the pastors that are a part of the Higher Things, all their divine services and sermons are fantastic. And so just something that I've always kind of battled. I posted something about this a couple of days ago on X, and obviously a lot of people are really opinionated because people grew up with the National Youth Gathering. It's been, I don't know if it's been around for 50, 40 years, but a lot of adults that have kids now that are sending them over there, they're wanting to take them over there because they want them to experience that, and they don't really know from that side of Higher Things. But it's not always up to me, but I'm always trying to really advocate, especially for my church, because we have a lot of high schoolers. We have like 20 high schoolers, and they all went, and that's great. I just wish that we would consider going to Higher Things, because I think they would get a lot more of going on that trip.
Yeah, I don't know. From what I read on Elon Musk's X, there was no actual contemporary worship happening. They had like concerts and things, and keynote speakers, but they weren't actually worship services. Yeah,
not the worship services. So, I would say more of the practicing within kids that were there, just to be more precise about that. Not actual from the LCMS gathering, I would say.
Yeah, I think I think it's tough, man, especially when it comes to worship styles. I'm a big high liturgy guy. I wish everybody had the highest liturgy in the world, but there was a whole generation that came before us that really thought that Kowo was the way to go. And short of literally waiting those people out, it's tough, man. It's tough to turn a ship around. You're gonna let's say you go through seminary and you get colloquized and you become a pastor one day, and then you get called to a church that has contemporary worship. If you walk in that church that first Sunday and order $1,800 worth of Lutheran service books and $5,000 worth of vestments and candles and everything else, and then the very next Sunday that your first whole Sunday that you're there, you fire the praise band and do a liturgical service, they're just gonna fire you. They're gonna kick you out. They're gonna run you out of town. And you deserve it, honestly. You can't, you have to be flexible and meet people where they're at, and you have to be willing to teach them and guide them into all truth, not force all truth upon them. So, you get a call to a church with contemporary worship, and you have to know going into it that you're going to spend the next decade of your life turning that ship around. Maybe faster, maybe slower. It's going to depend on them, but it starts at the ground. It starts with teaching, locally and slowly steering the ship. I know quite a few LCMS pastors who've been very successful at that, at elevating the liturgy and service in their churches. And it's doable. It takes time, and you have to be realistic about it. And at the end of the day, you do have to realize that the liturgy, by and large, is adiaphora, and that is, you can't go in and say, I'm the pastor, it's my way or the highway, and throw your weight around, because you're just not going to get anywhere. I mean, I've seen guys that have done it. I know guys that have been at calls for a disgracefully short amount of time because they did exactly that. They came in, and within 2 or 3 weeks were firing the praise band and trying to do the divine mass. And, the only thing they did was they lost their call. That was the only thing they accomplished, was getting kicked out of a church. So I don't know. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. My pastor calls it looking at what chips you have. don't go all in. Yeah. Don't lose them all.
Yeah. What hill are you willing to die on, man? That's what it is. That's what a lot of it comes down to, is what hill exactly are you willing to die on? And, it's best to, do I wish that we didn't have tiny cups? Yeah. God, yeah. I wish everybody took the chalice. But if I just throw away all the tiny cups, all I'm going to do is upset Nancy, our wonderful altar guild lady, who supplies the tiny cups out of her own budget, who personally buys and donates those to the church. The only thing I'm going to do is upset her. I'm not going to change anyone's mind. No more people are going to take the chalice if they don't have tiny cups. They're just going to refrain from taking the blood of Christ. So unless I actually sit down and teach people why it would be preferable to use the common cup, then, I'm not doing any good by just making sweeping changes. So
let's see if I can stump you right here. I love what you said about making sure you don't make people upset. There's not always going to be times that you can fix things, and a lot of those times you can get worked up out of nothing, something that's not the end of the world. One thing that I definitely something that I've been studying in the last 2 or 3 years that's very convicting to me is obviously close communion, and you can see that from the Lutheran perspective. And a good way to talk about this, I have a friend who just became a pastor a couple years ago. He's about 3 hours away from my where I live in Springfield, and he has a small Lutheran church. They're thriving, they're growing. But when he got there, they were only doing communion once every week, and a lot of them were half on.
I'm sorry, you said they were once every week.
Oh, I'm sorry. Every other week. Thanks for catching that. Every other week, okay. And there were also, yeah, and they were half and half on close communion, and so that's more of the question I'm going to ask you is, what about when it comes to close communion? How much are you willing to die on that? Because it is a very important doctrine. Obviously, there are some things that are not as important to die on a hill on, but I've had friends that have come to me and say, "Hey, is this important enough to sacrifice the entire church and piss off a lot of people?" What are your thoughts?
That's probably a hill I'd be willing to die on. I would, here's the thing is, it's a no-brainer, man. Communion should be open to anybody that comes up to the rail. Just if you come up, you should be able to receive. I don't care what's going on in your life no, I'm kidding. I just wanted to see if you'd react to that. No, I'm a closed communion guy, and that's a hill I would die on 100%. It's something that I would probably bring up in my interview right up front. That's where I stand on that. And that's what I think. It's probably something I would want them to know about me right out the gate. Now, you get a fresh call, you just show up to a church, you don't know anybody there. Your first 2 or 3 weeks, you are probably going to commune anybody that comes up to that rail, because you don't know anybody yet. You don't know. You're really having to rely on the elders of your church. And if the church is big on open communion, then relying on those elders is going to be no help. So you got to figure out a way, whether it's starting to meet one-on-one with everybody in the congregation, figure out who they are, where they're at, whether it's instituting like a Saturday night preparatory service or something, of the sort. But you got to figure something out within those first couple of weeks for sure. But yeah, definitely. But with everything else, closed communion is going to be the same at that church as it is with anything else at any other church. And it's just going to be patient teaching. You just have to teach people, because if you don't teach them, they don't know. So they don't know until you tell them. So you got to tell them.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you. That's something that I really advocate for that as well. Especially how, also, I'm glad I remembered this. Closed communion, in my congregation, which is very common in the LCMS right now, is we have a system. This is for a lot of people, even not for my age, but the generations before me, how we do confirmation, and to start taking Christ's sacrament of the altar. We start confirmation around 7th grade, 8th grade. And then once you're a freshman in high school, that's when you do your questions, do your confessions. And that's when whether the pastor will decide if you're ready or not. And something that my friend who's in Carrollington right now, and he's battling through a lot of these different questions, that's something that he is really talking about right now through the elders, is trying to change where not only someone can take communion when they're a freshman, but also if there's a 10-year-old or 11-year-old that seems to be ready for it. If by his judgment, he thinks this person is able to understand it, being able to confess it, that this person should be able to take it. But unfortunately, it's at the point where a lot of Lutherans, even if they do have a good understanding of what Paul is explaining in 1 Corinthians, they're still like, well, it's easier. It's easier that way. Just let's let our kids wait until they're freshmen, and once they're high schoolers, we'll just kind of let them go and they can do whatever they want. A lot of excuses based on, laziness, I would say. And so what would you, in your shoes, being a pastor, how would you handle that?
I am a big fan of early communion. If a child can articulate what the sacrament is, and then Luther gives those questions in the Catechism for self-examination. If we can go through those questions and you understand what's being asked and you understand your answers, I don't think we have any reason to bar you from the table, especially if you've been baptized. I think the idea of, connecting First Communion to confirmation, I think it can do harm sometimes, because there's already a temptation with confirmation to feel like you've graduated Christianity, and now you know everything. And truthfully, confirmation isn't congratulations, you've graduated Christianity. It's actually more akin to congratulations, now you're a Christian. It's not your graduating from the church, it's now your entrance into the church. But the way we do confirmation, I think, is so whack, dude. We spend 2 or maybe 2 years, maybe 3, but it's like school years, like once a week for an hour or whatever with the pastor, and we talk about the catechism. That's whack, man. That's not, I don't know, man. The early church screened hard. They taught hard. It was 3 straight years of, meeting with this guy and being mentored. And, I don't know. I understand how catechesis has changed throughout history, but, ultimately the way we approach catechesis these days, I don't really think makes lasting believers. I think it's more akin to scattering seed on the rocky ground. I think we need more involvement from parents for good catechesis. And I think if we had more involvement from parents, we'd see more things like early communion, because these kids would actually understand what was going on. So, but yeah, I'm a big proponent of early communion. I fought for it at our church. We have kids at our church that are nowhere near confirmation that are still communing nonetheless.
Yeah, nowadays you have parents that are going to principals because their kid got yelled at from a teacher. And then if you go into Luther's preface of the catechism, he goes, your kid can't eat. Your kid can't get out of bed until he reads the 10 Commandments, says it out loud, or says the creed, says the Lord's Prayer. And it's just, that's amazing. That's just like how you said how way more strict, but also disciplined parents were when it came to catechizing your kids. It just didn't start from, okay, you're 14, 15 years old. Now we're going to start introducing you the catechism. But 9 out of 10 times they're going to look through this and we're like, okay, I'm just going to tough it out for a year. Once I'm a high schooler, I can say that I can take the sacrament and I can kind of do whatever I want, and then eventually go to a different church or not be lazy about it. And that's kind of the cycle that's going on in a lot of churches I see. Definitely through my church. I was in a group of 16 kids in my confirmation, and there's, to be honest, I think probably just 4, 5, including me, go to Sunday school, go to church consistently. It's a sad deal. And I think it's not only the kids' laziness part, but I think it's also definitely through the families, because I mean, there's a reason why Luther wrote those catechisms. It's for not only pastors and laymen to teach their families, but also especially the fathers and mothers to be constantly teaching those kids. Because like the reason that we do those confessions for the congregation to speak for babies during baptism, it's in the same way how it's the congregation's job to be teaching those young people even after their baptism, to keep teaching them, keeping them getting ready for the world, let them prepare themselves for the evil that's about to go to them. But we teach them this so they have somewhere to go to through this evil when it comes knocking on their door, going to the Eucharist, remembering their baptism. I mean, it's so obvious. And so even though Lutherans have thrived so much on that, still a lot of our people nowadays are really struggling about it or even forgetting about it, which is a big reason why we don't have a lot of high schoolers in the LCMS right now.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because like then people blame the pastor. You know, my kid went through confirmation with you. Why did he fall away in college? You know, and it's like, well, your kid spent 65 hours with me grand total over their entire life. They spent a grand total of 65 one-on-one hours with me. You never did devotions at home. You never read the Bible with them. You never prayed with them. You never showed them you praying. You never modeled it or lived it. And every single Sunday there was a travel ball game that was more important than church. Mm-hmm. And now we're really, really, really surprised that you raised the world's greatest Green Bay Packers fan, and also he's not a Christian. Like, of course that's how that shook out. Of course that's how that shook out, because you showed them over and over that church wasn't a priority, and that, other things were, schools are, sports are. How often when parents are counseling their kids on what college to go to and what colleges to apply for, how often are they checking local churches around those colleges to see which college is going to have walking access to a confessional, sound biblical church? That doesn't even come up. They don't even consider it church. Church, it literally never enters the conversation. I guarantee you. If you asked any parent of a college-age kid, the average Lutheran parent of a college-age kid in the average LCMS or AALC congregation right now, you ask them, and how much time did you spend talking to your kid about what churches were around their college? I guarantee you they'd punch you in the mouth. They didn't even think about it. It never came up, and they're shocked you would ask. What does that matter? But then they're going to turn around and be surprised when, they don't have Christians for children, and they want to ask you, as the pastor, well, what happened? Why didn't you? I thought you confirmed them. I thought you catechized them. And, it's, I don't know.
Yeah, and a lot of those, which is also really cool in my congregation, my local congregation, a lot of those families, well, by the way, we're very blessed. We actually do have over average amount of kids and children and babies that are constantly being baptized at our church, which is fantastic. We just, Dr. Bierman, Joel Bierman's brother, his wife just had a baby at our church and just got baptized, which was fantastic. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. And we're just constantly having kids over at our church, which is great. And the fact is, a lot of those families or parents that came from our church were Methodist, they were Anglican, they were evangelical, they came from who knows what, from the Bible Belt, and them of all people should get what it's like to be going from that church to the Lutheran church, and how much Lutherans got it right and how solid we are through theology. And like you said, how it comes to that cycle where once again the kid is through high school, think he's graduated as a Christian, and they're asking these questions to the pastor, hey, what is going on? I thought we had all this right. And they're like, they go back to when they became Lutheran and said all these things that helped me stay into the Lutheran faith and I can grow. Well, I mean, there's a reason why Lutherans stayed Lutheran. It's because they were constantly in scriptures and they knew what they believed. And it's not just, okay, read the Bible. I know what I believe. I know this one verse about baptism saves. So I basically know the commentary of what it is to be Lutheran. I should be good to go. No. I mean, if you're lucky, your kid will become a Catholic bro or a Reformed Christian, or even worse, not a Christian at all, which I'm not saying becoming a Reformed Christian's a bad thing or condemning, but I mean, I wish they'd stay Lutheran, but those things happen for a reason. And I mean, it's just a shame.
I'll say it. Being reformed is bad. You don't want to be reformed. Stay away, kids. So you're just walking down the street one night on your way home from the church potluck, and John Calvin comes whispering to you from an alley, and he's like, "Hey, kid, hey, you want some double predestination?" Just say no, kids. Just say no.
Oh yeah, I know. I think John MacArthur is in heaven. I really think so. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, you were Reformed for a while. I forgot about that. That is, that's an interesting perspective as you as well, because my parents were also considering becoming Reformed Baptists for a little while. They were at some kind of non-denom church before that, and funny enough, my uncle, who's a Presbyterian pastor now, which he went to the seminary at St. Louis at one point, but decided not to go. And then he obviously went through his Reformed path, and now he's a Presbyterian pastor. And then my parents were kind of church hunting. They just got married, and my Reformed pastor my uncle was trying to tell them to go to this Reformed Baptist church, but it was closed. And he told them, well, maybe you should go to this Lutheran church. It should be fine. And so ever since, they've been Lutheran. And yes,
Let's
exactly.
go.
So I have my Reformed uncle to thank that I am Lutheran. It is the best blessing ever, best story to tell. Being baptized for almost 20 years and counting, it's fantastic. And but yeah, it's fun conversations too. I can bet you through Thanksgiving, I've had so many fun conversations, either if they're peaceful or aggressive. Nevertheless, they're great. How about your family? I would think that now that you're Lutheran, you still have a lot of different family members that come from different churches. Do you struggle with that? Do you at least have good conversations when it comes to talking to your family about different theology practices?
It's interesting talking to my family about theology. My wife grew up barely churched at all. And so really Lutheranism, when we joined the Lutheran Church 8 or so years ago, is really her first and only deep and real encounter with Christianity. So it's all she knows really is being Lutheran. And so I always love listening to her talk to people about Jesus and about theology, because she just gets it. And it's so beautiful because it's just all she knows. I was able to just sort of, indoctrinate her with, just the right things. And so it's so lovely to listen to her talk to people about that. The rest of my family is a mix of nominal Baptists, Pentecostal holiness. I have one cousin who is a wonderful man, and I love him to death. But I think he probably leans more agnostic, just kind of it's all just sort of the way to the one universal truth or whatever. And then I have a brother-in-law who is both an attorney and a Roman Catholic, and a very devout Roman Catholic. And as an attorney, he likes to argue, knows how to argue, and is very intelligent. And so my best theological conversations are with him.
You didn't tell me you had an evil Catholic brother. Never heard about that before. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
An evil Catholic brother.
Oh man, that's crazy.
When the American Pope got elected, old Pope Bob from Chicago, I tweeted something about like now that he's the head of state of a foreign nation, which he is, right? he's like the king of Vatican City, which is a nation. How does that impact? Like, does he still pay U.S. taxes? You know what I mean? Like, and how does that work? And I was like, could somebody clear this up for me? And then after I tweeted it, about 30 minutes later, my wife was like, why don't you just call your brother? And I was like, oh my gosh, I have a brother who is both an attorney and a Roman Catholic. He is like prime position to answer this question. So I ended up calling him and we spoke for quite a while.
That is awesome.
Yeah. The answer, by the way, is that it doesn't really matter if he has to pay taxes or not, or if he has to follow any kind of like old U.S. laws or have a visa now. None of that really matters. And it's all going to sort of take backseat to him being the Pope, you know? Maybe he has to pay his taxes still, maybe not, but the IRS isn't going to audit the Pope, you know, at the end of the day. They're just going to sort of defer to him being the Pope on everything.
I just got an idea for a new Netflix series. Oh my gosh, that would be great.
The one IRS agent that has to deal with the Pope's back taxes.
That is awesome. Oh man, get a Lutheran IRS guy going up into the Roman Empire. Go over there and tell him he has to pay his taxes. That would be awesome. Actually, that'd be a better comedy, I would say. I think that'd be better as a comedy. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good way to end on. So thank you so much for coming on, Remy. It's good to have you back on Lift High the Cross podcast. It's always great talking to you.
100%. Thank you, Ray.